Picture this, a mysterious assassin locked in a cage, heading to the wall to freeze with the Night's Watch. A 10-year-old girl with a bad haircut pretending to be a boy. Their meeting, completely random and pure chance. Fast forward a few months, that same assassin hands the girl a strange iron coin, teaches her 2 words in a foreign language, and tells her to come find him across the narrow sea in Braavos. Why? What did he see in her? Here's what makes this so fascinating. Jaqen H'ghar isn't some random mentor figure looking to do a good deed. He's a faceless man, part of the most elite, most expensive, most secretive guild of assassins in the entire world. These people don't recruit, they don't advertise, they most certainly don't hand out business cards to children they meet on the road. And yet, Jaqen did exactly that with Arya Stark. But here's the thing most people miss. This wasn't kindness, this wasn't charity, this wasn't even about honoring some debt to the Red God. Jaqen H'ghar saw something in Arya during their brief time together, something that made her not just a good candidate, but potentially the perfect recruit for the Faceless Men. What was it? What did a trained assassin, someone who can literally change faces and become anyone, see in a traumatized kid with a sword she could barely lift? The answer was way more calculated, way more deliberate, and way darker than you probably think. Because when you break down everything Jaqen observed, every test he put her through, and the exact moment he decided she was worth recruiting, you realize something chilling. Arya Stark wasn't just a potential faceless man. She was the most promising future assassin Jaqen has probably ever encountered, and he knew it within weeks of meeting her. Let me show you exactly how he figured it out, and why everything he did, from the 3 deaths to the coin, was part of a deliberate recruitment strategy. Because by the end of this, you'll see Jaqen's actions in a completely different light. So let's break it down. Part 1, the setup. How a faceless man met a Stark. First, we need to establish something critical that a lot of people just get wrong. Jaqen H'ghar was not looking for Arya Stark when he got captured. This is important because some people theorize that Jaqen somehow orchestrated their meeting, that he got himself arrested and put in that cage specifically to get close to her. That doesn't make sense, and here's why. Jaqen was already locked in that cage with Rorge and Beater already scheduled to head north to the Night's Watch, well before Yoren randomly spotted Arya in King's Landing. Remember the timeline. Yoren saw this kid being chased by gold cloaks, recognized her despite the haircut, and made a split-second decision to claim her as a Night's Watch recruit and smuggle her into the caravan. That was not planned, that was Yoren improvising to save Ned Stark's daughter. So no, Jaqen didn't engineer their first meeting. Their meeting was pure coincidence. Wrong place, wrong time, or maybe right place, right time, depending on how you look at it. But here's what's not a coincidence. Jaqen definitely stayed around because of Arya. After everything that happened at Harrenhal, after she freed him and he killed for her, he only left once his deal with her was complete, and he'd planted that seed about coming to Braavos. He could have disappeared the moment he was free, faceless men are good at that, but he didn't. He hung around, he waited, and he watched. Why? Because in the relatively short time they spent together, we're talking roughly the span of a Clash of Kings, from the journey out of King's Landing to Harrenhal and its aftermath, Jaqen observed everything he needed to make a decision about Arya's potential. So the real question becomes, what exactly did he see during that period that made him want to recruit a 10-year-old girl into the most dangerous profession in Westeros? The answer is actually pretty straightforward when you look at it from Jaqen's perspective, but to understand it, we need to walk through everything he observed, step by step, starting from that very first day in the caravan. So part 2, what Jaqen saw, the perfect recruit hiding in plain sight, the disguise that wasn't. Let's start with Arya's disguise, because this is where Jaqen's interest begins. Picture Arya as she appears in that caravan. Hair chopped short, face dirty, wearing boys' clothes, calling herself Aerie to most of the people in that group. The other recruits, the gold cloaks who come searching. It's enough. They see a boy, maybe a bit odd, but nothing worth investigating. But Jaqen H'ghar, he's a faceless man. His entire profession revolves around 2 things: disguising his own appearance so thoroughly that he can become anyone, and seeing through other people's disguises and lies. He's trained to spot the tiny details that give someone away. The way they move, the way they speak, the things they try to hide. To someone with that training, Arya's disguise would have been immediately transparent. A haircut and a dirty face against someone who's literally spent years studying how to detect deception, not even close to convincing. So from day 1, Jaqen knows this boy is not who she claims to be. That alone would make him curious. But Arya, remember, is still only 10 years old at this point. She hasn't mastered the art of keeping secrets yet, and she proceeds to give away clue after clue after clue about who she really is. So let's list out the clues that she gave. Clue number 1, the sword. Arya carries around Needle, an expensively made, castle-forged sword custom made for her. Now, why would an orphan boy from Flea Bottom have a weapon like that? Street kids don't carry swords that cost more than their family earns in a year. Stolen? Maybe. But she's too protective of it, too attached to it. And that's not how you treat stolen goods. Clue number 2, the water dance stance. This is a big one. When Arya gets into a fight with Hot Pie, one of the other boys in the caravan, she doesn't fight like a street kid. She doesn't brawl or grapple, she adopts a Braavosi water dancer style, the exact style Syrio Forel had been teaching her. To anyone who knows anything about sword fighting, this is a massive tell. The Braavosi water dance isn't something you pick up on the streets. It's a refined technical style that requires a skilled teacher. The kind of teacher that costs serious money. Once again, not consistent with being a low-born orphan from Flea Bottom. Clue number 3, bathroom habits. Arya noticeably never goes to the bathroom at the same time as the other boys. Small detail, right? But to someone watching carefully, someone like Jaqen, it's another piece of the puzzle. And clue number 4, Yoren's treatment. Yoren, the recruiter, treats Arya slightly different than the other recruits. Nothing too obvious, but there's a protectiveness there, a special attention. Why would a Night's Watch recruiter care more about one random street kid than the others? Unless that kid wasn't random at all. Clue number 5, the Gold Cloaks. When Gold Cloaks from King's Landing come looking for someone, specifically someone important who may have escaped the city, Arya hides. She makes herself scarce. Everyone else is curious, watching. She's terrified. That's the behavior of someone who's running, someone who has something to hide. Clue number 6, Winterfell. This is the smoking gun. When the group gets attacked, Arya shouts Winterfell as a battle cry. Not King's Landing, not Flea Bottom, not even just a generic shout. She yells the name of the castle she grew up in the seat of House Stark, the home she's trying to get back to. To Jaqen, sitting in that cage, hearing that, game over. He knows. Now for putting it all together. So by the time Arya frees Jaqen from his burning cage, and we're only talking maybe a couple of weeks into their journey at this point, if he's been paying attention, and you can safely assume he has, Jaqen will have gathered enough information to piece together a pretty accurate picture. Number 1, this is a high-born girl, not a low-born boy. She's from the north, specifically from Winterfell. She's had expensive training with a sword, she's running from the authorities in King's Landing, and she's desperate to stay hidden. Everyone knows the Night's Watch has close ties to the Starks. Ned Stark's own brother is First Ranger, and Ned sent many men to the Wall over the years. Given that King's Landing just executed Ned Stark for treason, and his daughters vanished, it doesn't take much imagination to connect the dots. This is Arya Stark, Ned's youngest daughter, missing and presumed captured or dead. So although Arya is surprised when Jaqen addresses her by her real name, we shouldn't be. In the relatively short journey from King's Landing to the south end of the God's Eye Lake, Jaqen H'ghar worked out exactly who she was. But here's the thing. Her identity as a Stark probably didn't matter that much to him. That's not why he decided to recruit her. The Faceless Men don't care about noble houses or family names. They care about talent, ability, and mindset. And that's where it gets really interesting. Because as Jaqen observed Arya during their time together, he saw something far more valuable than a highborn name. She was already living multiple identities. I mean, think about Arya's life up to this point. In a very short span of time, she's lived as Arya Stark, noble daughter of Lord Eddard Stark, living in luxury at the Red Keep, a street urchin chasing cats in Flea Bottom, learning the city's secrets, Ari, a boy recruit heading to the Night's Watch. She was also a servant girl at Harrenhal, invisible and overlooked. 4 distinct identities. 4 different personas, each with their own mannerisms, speech patterns, and behaviors, and she's pulling it off. Not perfectly, we've established she leaves some clues, but she's fooling most people most of the time. She's living the life of a face changer even before she knows how to actually change faces. To Jaqen, this has to be incredibly impressive. Most people can barely maintain one false identity for a short time before they slip up or crack under the pressure. Arya's maintaining multiple identities, switching between them as circumstances demand, and she's doing it at age 10 under incredible stress. That's not normal, that's natural talent. Arya was also already obsessed with death, but there's something else Jaqen noticed, something darker and more important for his purposes. Arya is increasingly fixated on death. Not in a philosophical what happens when we die way, she's fixated on killing, specifically on the deaths of her enemies. She's developing a list, adding names to it every night, reciting them like a prayer. For most people, this would be concerning. For members of the many-faced god, the god of death, this is ideal. The Faceless Men don't shy away from death or try to rationalize it away. They embrace it, they serve it, and here's a 10-year-old who's already developed that mindset on her own without any guidance or training. Now add in the context of where Arya is emotionally and psychologically. She just watched her own father get unjustly executed in front of a screaming crowd. The man who was supposed to protect her, who represented everything good and honorable in her world, died helpless on his knees while she watched. She had to send away her direwolf, her companion and protector. That bond, especially for someone who's a warg, that bond, even if she doesn't understand it yet, was profound. Losing it was traumatic. She lost Syrio Forel, her teacher, the one person in King's Landing she'd started to form a real bond with after her father. He died, presumably, defending her. She's 1,000 miles away from home. She's 1,000 miles away from home. Everyone she loves, either dead, scattered, or unreachable. No friends, no family to call on for help. No one even knows where she is or if she's alive. She's basically completely and utterly alone in the world, and from a recruitment perspective, she's at the most impressionable, most vulnerable stage of her life. Her entire world has been torn apart. She has no anchor, no support system, no one to guide her. She's desperate, traumatized, and looking for anything to hold on to. She is, in other words, absolutely ripe for recruitment, for someone to come along, show her a path forward, give her purpose and direction, and mold her into whatever they need. Bizarrely enough, Arya might have even reminded Jaqen of the Waif, another child of an ancient noble house who lost a parent when she was young and ended up with the Faceless Men. The parallels are there. And here's the clincher, the final piece that makes Arya perfect from Jaqen's perspective. No one would miss her. No one would come looking. As far as the world knows, Arya Stark is either dead or imprisoned in King's Landing. Her family is scattered or dead. Winterfell is occupied by enemies. The Stark household is gone. There is no one in a position to search for her. No one who even knows where to start looking. If she disappeared to Braavos with Jaqen, there would be no consequences. No pursuit, no one demanding her return. She's a ghost already, so might as well make it official. So let's recap what Jaqen observed in Arya during their short time together. 1. She's clever enough to attempt disguises and fool most people. 2. She's bold and can handle herself in dangerous situations. 3. She has talent with a sword despite her size and age. 4. She's already living multiple identities with natural ease. 5. She's obsessed with death and killing. 6. She's at a vulnerable, impressionable age. 7. She's completely alone with no support system. And finally, no one would come looking even if she vanished. Arya wasn't just some child he could try to recruit. She met every single criteria Jaqen would have for the ideal apprentice. But watching isn't enough. Jaqen needed to test her, to see if she had the stomach for what the Faceless Men actually do. He needed to know if she could kill, and that's where the 3 deaths come in. Part 3, the test. After Arya saved Jaqen, Rorge, and Biter from the fire, Jaqen comes back to her at Harrenhal with a proposition. The Red God demands 3 deaths in exchange for the 3 lives she saved. On the surface, this makes sense, right? The Faceless Men are assassins who require payment for their services. We here, only death can pay for life elsewhere in this world. It was said to Daenerys before taking her unborn child's life in exchange for Dragos. It seems like some fundamental principle of magic in this universe. So when Jaqen frames it this way, it sounds plausible. It sounds like there's some cosmic balance that needs to be maintained, some magical law that Arya has accidentally invoked by saving 3 lives from fire. But that is actually complete BS, and I can prove it. So here's why the balanced explanation doesn't work. Let's think about the logic here for a second. When Arya saved Jaqen, Rorge, and Biter from that burning wagon, was she thinking, I'm now obligated to cause 3 deaths to balance the cosmic scales? No, of course not. She was thinking, these men are going to burn to death, and I have the key to their cage. She made a choice in that moment to save lives. There was no magical contract, no invocation of ancient rules, no debt incurred to any god. And here's the important part. No other character in this entire series thinks they need to kill someone just because they saved someone's lives. That's not how it works. Healers don't go around murdering people to balance all the lives they've saved. Jon Snow doesn't owe the universe deaths for everyone he's rescued. The casualty is backwards. Arya saved lives, but she didn't pay for those lives with future death. She just saved them, and that's it. And Jaqen doesn't actually believe it either. But here's what really gives it away. Jaqen himself doesn't actually care about this supposed balance. Watch what happens. Jaqen puts up a pretense of not wanting to kill multiple people when Arya names Jaqen H'ghar as her 3rd name, forcing him to help her or kill himself. He acts like this is bending the rules, like it's complicated. But he does it anyway. He kills a bunch of guards to help them escape Harrenhal. And then what? Does he follow up by saying, now you owe more deaths to restore the balance? Does he say, you must save lives to make up for all the extra deaths I caused? Nope, nothing. The balance he was so concerned about apparently doesn't matter anymore. Because it was never about balance, it was about something else entirely. The whole 3 deaths for 3 lives thing was a clever hook, a compelling narrative that gave Jaqen an excuse to come back to Arya and make an offer. But the real purpose? To test whether Arya would really go through with killing people. Think about it from Jaqen's perspective. He's observed this girl, he's seen her talent, her potential, her vulnerability. He thinks she could be an excellent Faceless Man, but there's one thing he can't know just from observation. Does she have the mentality to actually kill? Wanting people dead is one thing. Lots of people want their enemies dead. Actually ordering someone's death, knowing your words will directly cause a person to stop existing, that takes a special kind of person. That takes someone cold, decisive enough, and morally flexible enough to cross that line. Jaqen needed to know if Arya was that kind of person. So he frames it as a debt, as something she has to do, and then he waits to see what she'll do. Will she name people? Will she hesitate? Will she try to back out? And Arya, she passes the test with flying colors. She doesn't hesitate. She doesn't agonize over the moral implications. She lists off the names. The Tickler, a torturer who's been terrorizing people at Harrenhal, Sir Amer-Lorch, another cruel man with blood on his hands, and then cleverly, when Jaqen seems like he might not help her escape, she names Jaqen himself, forcing his hand. No remorse, no second thoughts, just cold, practical decision making about who needs to die and why. That's exactly what Jaqen wanted to see. But Jaqen pushes even further. He tells Arya she could name anyone, even a king. Specifically, he mentions that she could name Joffrey, who he knows is on her list. But why offer this? Well, there's two reasons. First, to see if she'll actually do it. Will she take the easy path, name the king responsible for her father's death, and let Jaqen solve all her problems? Second, to see if she understands consequences and strategy. I mean, naming Joffrey would be emotionally satisfying, but tactically complicated. She's at Harrenhal, Joffrey's in King's Landing, and getting to him would be difficult, even for a faceless man. Arya resists. She uses her names strategically instead, to solve her immediate problems and escape Harrenhal. If this was a test, she passed it perfectly. She showed she could kill without remorse, but also think strategically about when and how to use that ability. She had the mentality, she had the talent, she had everything Jaqen was looking for. Part 4, the prayer. But there's one more thing, one final piece that really cemented Jaqen's decision to recruit Arya. And it's something I think most people overlook. In the books, Jaqen returns to Arya at Harrenhal, coincides with Arya reciting her list out loud. Here's how it happens. Arya is laying in bed at night, she thinks she's alone, and she starts listing the names of people she wants dead. Her nightly ritual. She says this out loud, a prayer in the darkness. And then, the very next paragraph, Jaqen wakes her up to tell her to give him 3 names of people who should die. To understand why this would have resonated so deeply with Jaqen, we need to talk about the origin story of the Faceless Men. The story goes like this. Long ago, in the mines between the 14 flames of Valyria, slaves worked in conditions so horrific that death was a mercy. They prayed for release, prayed for the suffering to end. The first Faceless Man heard these prayers and he granted them the gift of death, mercy in the form of poison or a blade in the dark. But then the first Faceless Man heard a different kind of prayer, a slave praying not for his own death, but for the death of a master, one of the slavers causing all the suffering. The first Faceless Man granted that prayer too, but in exchange he demanded something, lifelong service. The slave who made the prayer would have to dedicate his life to the many-faced god, becoming a Faceless Man himself. This is the fundamental story of the Faceless Men, answering desperate prayers for death in exchange for service. Now, back to Arya. Although we often call it her hit list or her kill list, that's not what she calls it. She calls it her prayer. Every night she recites names like she's praying. Later in the story, she even ends this prayer with "all men must die," the sacred words of the Faceless Men. So imagine you're Jaqen, you're a follower of the many-faced god, you've been watching this girl, testing her, considering whether to recruit her, and then you overhear her alone in the dark, praying, literally praying for people to die, listing their names, asking in her own way for the gift of death to be granted to her enemies. To Jaqen, this would have seemed like nothing less than a desperate prayer to his god, a prayer that needed answering. This wasn't just a test anymore. This was the universe, fate, and the many-faced god himself. However, Jaqen wants to conceptualize it, putting this girl in his path for a reason. She was praying for death. He grants death. It's literally what he's made for. So when Jaqen appears and asks Arya to name 3 people who will die, it's not just about testing her resolve or maintaining cosmic balance, it's about answering her prayer. Just like the first Faceless Man answered the prayers of the slaves, Jaqen is answering Arya's prayer, and just like the first Faceless Man demanded service in return, Jaqen is preparing to make the same offer. You prayed for death, I will grant it, but in exchange you must serve. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. Part 5, the offer. After everything, after the observations, the tests, the answered prayers, Jaqen makes his move. He gives Arya an iron coin. On it is inscribed a symbol she doesn't recognize. He teaches her 2 words, Valar Morghulis. And he tells her if she ever wants to learn what he knows to become what he is, she can take that coin to any Braavosi and say those words. They'll take her to the House of Black and White. This is an open offer, an invitation with no expiration date. Whenever she's ready, if she's ever ready, the door is open. And to sweeten the deal to make it more enticing, Jaqen shows off a bit. He literally changes his face right in front of her, one of the signature abilities of the Faceless Men. For a girl who's been living under false identities, who understands the power of becoming someone else, this has to be captivating. He's showing her this is what you could learn, this is what you could become. But here's what's remarkable. When Arya says she has other things to do first, she wants to go home to Winterfell to find her family, and Jaqen accepts that. He doesn't push, he doesn't try to manipulate her into coming right away. He just nods, tells her the offer stands, and disappears. But why did he do that? Because Jaqen wants a willing apprentice, not a reluctant one. The Faceless Men require total commitment, total dedication. Someone who's thinking about home, about family, about unfinished business isn't ready. They'll be distracted, divided, unable to give themselves fully to the training. So it's better to let her go, let her try to reclaim her old life. If she succeeds, great, she wasn't meant to be a Faceless Man anyways. If she fails, if she realizes there's nothing left for her in Westeros, heroes, she'll come to Braavos on her own. And that's exactly what happened. By the time Arya makes it to the House of Black and White, everything has changed. Winterfell is gone, her family's either scattered or dead, her mother was murdered at the Red Wedding, Robb is dead, Sansa is missing, Bran and Rickon are supposedly dead, Jon is at the Wall, unreachable. She has literally nowhere else to go. So she arrives at the House of Black and White with Jaqen's coin as a recommendation, the words he taught her as a password, an understanding on both sides of what she's there to learn, and most importantly, she no longer yearns for Winterfell. She's giving up her old identity because there's nothing left of it to hold on to. That's when Jaqen knew she was ready. Not when he first met her, not when he tested her, but when she arrived at his doorstep with nothing left, ready to become no one. Number 6, the real reason. Let's bring it all together and talk about what makes Arya so uniquely perfect for the Faceless Men. It's not just one thing, it's a combination of natural talents, circumstantial factors, and psychological traits that all aligned at the exact right moment. Natural talents. Intelligence, she's clever enough to adapt and learn quickly. Physical ability, despite her size, she can handle herself in a fight. Disguise, she naturally adopts different personas and identities. Observation skills, she notices details, remembers faces and names. What about her psychological traits? Well, obsession with death. Unlike most people, she doesn't shy away from killing. Moral flexibility, she can justify killing without excessive guilt or remorse. Determination, once she sets her mind to something, she follows through. Adaptability, she can switch between identities and roles seamlessly. What about circumstantial factors? Vulnerability, traumatized and alone, perfect for recruitment. Impressionable age, young enough to be molded and trained. No attachments, no one would come looking for her, and nowhere else to go. Eventually she'd have no choice but to accept. So, the prayer. She was literally praying for death, for people to be killed. This resonated with the fundamental origin of the Faceless Men. It made her recruitment feel like destiny or divine. Put it all together and you don't just have someone who might make a decent Faceless Man, you have someone who is almost supernaturally well suited for it. Arya Stark wasn't just a potential recruit, she was the most promising future Faceless Man Jaqen H'ghar has probably ever encountered. Why do the Faceless Men need to recruit anyways? Well, remember, the Faceless Men aren't a religion, they don't go door to door trying to convert people, they don't preach or advertise their services. But to keep their organization going, to maintain their numbers and pass on their knowledge, they need to actively recruit new members. They can't rely on people just randomly showing up to the House of Black and White asking to become assassins, because it doesn't work that way. They need to find talented individuals, evaluate them, and bring them in. Jaqen was doing exactly that. He was recruiting, and in Arya he found the jackpot. So in conclusion, it was never really about debt or destiny. So let's circle back to where we started. Why did Jaqen H'ghar recruit Arya Stark? Not because he owed her a debt, not because of the Red God demanded balance, not because of fate or destiny or prophecy. He recruited her because he's a professional assassin who recognized exceptional talent when he saw it. Everything he did, the 3 deaths test, the answered prayer, the coin, and the offer, was part of a calculated recruitment strategy. He observed, he evaluated, he tested, and he made an offer. And Arya, she was the perfect candidate from day one. That's the real story, not destiny, not magic, just a skilled recruiter recognizing exceptional talent and doing everything he could to bring her into the fold. Cold, calculated, effective. Very much in character for a Faceless Man. Here we reached the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments what Game of Thrones theories or characters you'd like me to explore, and hit the like and subscribe button if you guys want to support me. Thank you guys so much, and see you in the next video. Bye.